We will call to order the Lease Summit Planning Commission meeting for Thursday, July 13th, 2023. Could I get a roll call, please?
Art Kitchens. Rader.
Here.
Appl.
Present.
Present.
Barry Trafton. Tauzinski.
Present.
Chip Tauzinski.
Engineer. Present.
Ania Jana Ford.
Present.
Thank you. And yes, we hear you, Terry, loud and clear. No changes to the agenda, so I look for a motion to approve the agenda as published.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the agenda as published.
Motion of second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Can I get a vote on approval of the agenda, please?
Aye. Aye.
Yes.
Barry Trafton.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Thank you. We got our point for public comments. Do we have any comments from the public outside of any of the applications we have tonight? Jumping up, so we will move on to our next one. This is the approval of our consent agenda, which contains one item, and that's item A, approval of the June 22nd, 2023 Planning Commission action letter. Could I get a motion for the approval of the consent agenda?
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I have a motion. I have a second.
Second.
Motion and a second. Could I get a vote, please?
Rader.
Aye.
Arth.
Aye.
Donnie Khan.
Yes.
Barry Trafton.
Yes.
Tauzinski.
Yes. Yes.
Consent agenda has been approved. We will move on to our next item of business, our public hearing. We have one public hearing, and we will open up application PL 2023-111, Preliminary Development Plan Douglas Corner Retail, Building 150 Northeast Tudor Road, Capital Builders LLC applicant. Anyone wishing to speak on behalf of this application, please stand and be sworn in at this time.
You promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Thank you. The applicant have a presentation. Give us your name and address for the record, please.
Yep, you bet. My name is Matt Hendrickson at 1507 Northeast Wall Street. This is what we're calling Douglas Corner to date. It's roughly an 8,000 square foot retail building, single story, located to kind of orient you off of Douglas and Tudor behind that Schlotsky's there that is across Tudor Road from Lee Summit North. I'll be brief and try not to steal any presentation. It's right now built as a cold shell. We don't have any tenants currently that have signed on to lease the space. It will be a sprinkled building. For years, this property has sat vacant with just a parking lot. It used to be, I believe, the old. We'll be making parking lot as well as adding to it, much it. Let me just give you a quick orientation on materials. There's a wood look composite wood look material that's on the exterior. There's a metal panel, and then there's some stucco with glazing. As you can see, all four sides. Site is quite large, with the majority of it being taken up either by detention pond or easement for Evergy with some power lines that run adjacent. You're anticipating a tenant base of health and wellness, medical, but also could be a small, some sort of small food. The high-level project, and happy to answer any questions when appropriate.
Thank you. So,
Good evening, Hector Soto Jr., Senior Planner. I'd like to enter into the record Exhibit A, list of exhibits 1 through 14.
exhibits 1 through 14 noted and entered into the record.
Mr. Hendrickson has stated the project site here is highlighted in orange, and it is located just off the northeast corner of Douglas and Tudor. As he stated, there's Schlotsky's immediately to the south. There's a multi-tenant commercial building to the immediate west with a number of retail and office users. A gas station to the north. To the east is a church. And to the northeast, you do have a single-family residential subdivision. Property in question, the improvements to it will include expansion of the existing parking lot, the single-story, about 7,800 square foot building, and there will be a detention pond that wraps around from the north to the east of the site to serve as a buffer between the residential uses to the northeast, and also serves as a buffer from the church to the east. Parking-wise, they're looking to build out will be 46 parking spaces. The UDO requires a minimum of 39, so they're in compliance and have some additional parking associated with their project. Hendrickson already gave you a run through, but here you can see that the ivory colored material is stucco. The gray would be some architectural metal panel system, and then how we mentioned the wood composite that would also help frame, kind of alternating the different tenant space entrances, kind of highlight those and provide some contrasting material and kind of some warmth to the look of it. But overall, it is a contemporary type of look. And they do carry the use of that material to the rear of the building, and they do use some of those to kind of accent some projections and some man doors that serve the individual tenant spaces. So with this application, there are two modification requests. The UDO requires CP2 zone property, which this is, when it abuts single-family R1 zone property, that a high-impact buffer be provided. So in this case, as you saw in that early overhead, that there is that single-family subdivision to the northeast. So if I can highlight here, there is an existing wood fence that separates those residential uses from the adjoining church and commercial uses. Or west, but so it comes down here, and there's about 83 feet of common boundary between this project area and the residential. As you can see, that particular area, you do have the detention pond that does abut it and serves as that physical buffer to provide some separation between the two. So the modification request is to forego the planting of any landscaping along that common boundary. And the reason why, and this image here illustrates, but I'll walk through it, is that through here we have a dense network of utility lines that really would conflict and not allow for the planting of landscaping through here. And so in addition to the wood fence, in red here you see some overhead utility lines, but here in green you have sanitary sewer. You also have in kind of this magenta color, you have some fiber optic line that runs right along here. Our ordinance says that those required landscape buffers do have to sit within the first 20 feet where you do have the coming together of those dissimilar land uses. But again, that network of utility lines provides a conflict where you wouldn't be able to plant any substantial landscaping to provide the intended type of physical buffer between the two uses. In lieu of that, the developer will be relocating essentially the landscaping to put them closer to the building, clear of the utility easements, all of the utility lines, and staying clear of the detention pond, so that you still have that softening of the look of the building from the view of the residences by providing that landscaping up and against the building on the north and to the east. The second modification request is to allow for the use of the wood composite that's being used as an accent material in the building and extend it to the use of the walls for the trash enclosure. So at the north end here, you have the elevations for all four sides of the proposed trash enclosure. So the south, west, and north would use that material. The gate itself would continue as required by ordinance to be a solid metal gate. The image here to the south, or just to the bottom of it, is an image of the similar trash enclosure that was recently approved here along the alley on the other side of Douglas Street. So it is a similar type of material, and it'll have a similar look to it. Of course, this one is much larger than what's needed for this center, but it provides a real-world example of that, the use of that material and how it's been able to hold up. And just from a design standpoint, they are kind of tying that thread, that design thread of incorporating some of that material from the building and extending it onto the trash enclosure. That we've already gone through the materials, but I guess kind of further go into some of the detail. There is just some use of stucco. Of course, there's a lot of windows. Are calling for the use of masonry, some concrete on there. The site itself is an infill location. About 5 years or so ago, there was a previously approved preliminary development plan for a building of the same footprint. The only difference was at that time there was a second-story proposed use of, I believe, 2 and 3 residential units above for about 4,500 square feet. But the footprint of this building is, square footage-wise, is identical to that previously approved project. But as an infill site, it makes good use of an underutilized piece of property at a prominent location. There are 5 conditions of approval. The first, the first 3 being having to do with the trash enclosure material, which would be condition number 3, and then conditions 1 and 2 having to do with the landscape buffer between the dissimilar uses. Numbers 4 and 5 are pretty standard. Number 4 just meaning that they have to construct a project as reflected in the plan. And then number 5 does require approval as a conditional material for the use of architectural metal panels. So with that, I'll yield to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Hector. Questions or comments from the public? Jump right over to the commission. Raider, you have any questions?
I have a question about, I never heard of stucco with glazing. What is that?
Oh, I'm sorry. It should have been comma. Stucco, comma, and then glazing, referring to the storefronts, the glass storefronts. Yes. Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. That's all I had.
I have no questions.
Commissioner Tuzinski?
No questions.
Benbrook?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Quick question. Can we pull up the site plan? Actually, that one was good with all the utilities on it. That would look, okay. Looking at the way this is laid out, we're utilizing part of the existing parking lot, is that correct? And we're already doing some modifications to it?
Yes.
And we're over parked at this point, right? We got 7 additional
Correct.
over parked, but
Correct.
we're exceeding
Yes.
the minimum standard. So as part of the modifications of the landscape, I like the way that we're wrapping it around the building and staying out of the, all the easements. I think that's a great idea. Well worked through. I would love to see a couple trees in the parking lot. This area, you got concrete all around it. You're gonna get a lot of reflective sun. It's gonna become a heat bowl with that building across from it. It's gonna get hot during the summer. During the winter, you're gonna get a lot of northern wind whipping between there because it's gonna create a vortex effect. It would be great if we could modify it and get a couple trees in that island to help break that up, slow down the wind a little bit, provide a little shade. Looks like we already got some landscape there. Maybe we could thicken up some of those islands and get a couple trees in there. Would be fantastic. That's my only comment. Other than that, I think the building looks good. Property. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Trafton, do you have anything?
No, I don't, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Hector, that road, I guess you call it a road that splits where this site will be, Slotsky's is around, and then we have the current building that's already in place. That section there, that's a private.
Correct. It is all
So is there any
private drive.
easement rights or anything that needs to be done for this property to go into place and add 46 parking spaces, which could potentially add 46 more vehicles pulling in there? Traffic studies required for this?
There were no traffic studies. It didn't trigger the requirement for a traffic impact study. Now, with all of our preliminary development plan projects, our traffic engineers do a transportation impact analysis. But in terms of just a separate study, it didn't trigger. It's typically triggered when you have you have a use that's triggering or generating more than 100 trips in the peak hour, and this will not do it. But to your question about, there is a blanket easement from what I recall at the time that because this is all one Douglas Corner plat. So from my recollection, there is a cross-access easement that will handle that. And as part of this project, there will be a replatting of it to shift this lot line here. So when we go through that process, we'll ensure that all of the necessary cross-access easements are dedicated and in place.
But if the temp stop were to close off that access, which they very well could, I don't think that's required when we talked about this. If they were to close that off, there's just really one way in, one way out of this.
Correct, that would be correct, yes.
That would be a question for the chief back there, if that would create an issue if that were closed off. I'm certain there's turnaround points and things like that we can make, but
Jim Eden, Assistant Chief. I apologize, I didn't hear your question.
so I know years back when we had some redevelopment of this whole thing, that access that actually pops into Maple Tree Plaza, or what is currently the tip stop up there, kind of where that little red dot is.
Right.
They could close that off. They're not required to have that access there, I don't believe. It was a conversation that we had before when Douglas was realigned and they put the turn lanes in. This would limit this to a one-way in, one-way out for all of this stuff. That's not going to create.
It could create some, looking at the square footage of the existing buildings and the amount of square footage we have on a single access. Can't exceed 62,000 square feet. Obviously, the new building is sprinklered, so that provides some assistance, but as far as access into the back, it would make things a little bit more difficult, but just glancing at it, I think it would probably meet code requirements.
Hector, do
I'd have
we
to look at it closer.
we have anything in place for the applicant here tonight to maybe work with Maple Tree Plaza to ensure that, hey, I don't know why they wouldn't. I'm going a little far in the weeds, but why they wouldn't want access up to their convenience store. But if that was closed off up there, if that is an access agreement that could get put in place for the applicant.
We would have to research. I'd have to research to see what existing documents that there might be. Right now, the multi-tenant building as a whole, as I measured it out, it's roughly about 34,000 square feet. With this additional 8,000, we'd be looking about 41, and Schlotsky's a few thousand, so.
They're still
Chair, we can also definitely, there's another opportunity to work with and continue fleshing that out with FDP process as well.
Okay.
Items are necessary, obtain those at that time as well. Thank you.
I guess going back to the traffic piece of this, high school across the street. We know what that place is. 6:45 and 8 o'clock in the morning, and what it is from 2 in the afternoon. That intersection, that's got to be a ride out at some point. There's no way. Trying to turn left out of that intersection. You're talking about adding 46 spaces in there and this high school across the street. That's a huge concern. If I had anything in regards to this application, is that intersection right there. You're between those two lights.
Yeah, currently it's a full access intersection. I would guess only half of those 46 trips are going out either direction, assuming that access to the north stays open. I would think your traffic's probably split about equally. And although we do allow lefts out now, we would just continue to monitor it and make sure that, we don't have a problem.
But for the record, the applicant should understand that at some point this could become a ride-out access only. And if there was no agreement with temp stop, you're only going to have one way out of this place, and that's to go right. At some
Correct.
point.
It's possible.
Hypothetically.
I think working with temp stop on getting the cross-access agreement would be a wise thing to do.
And I think that's a question for the applicant that you have to understand. At one point, this could be shut down and be a one-way out of this place. You could only go right. You could not turn left out of this. There could be, we ran into this on the other side of town, that there was a median that had to be put in place to do this. I just want to make sure that that's understandable and that access to temp stop could be closed off.
That access.
Have a ride in and a ride out. Anybody coming from any other direction can't get to your piece of property. I want to make sure that that's understandable from you guys and it's on the record.
Kevin Starrett, HG Consult, civil engineer on this project. As Hector said earlier, this is the second time around on this project. We did this exact same one about 4 years ago where the PDP was approved and actually went through the whole FDP process before the guy walked away from it. But that was discussed with the temp stop owner, and he happens to be a client of mine as well, and he was all good with this. In fact, he was all good with it if we would, there's a little bit of that island that kind of made it more of a hairpin turn, and if we would cut off that island there that straightens it up, he was all good with this at the time. So if it needs to have a letter from him saying he's still good with it, I'm sure we could accommodate that. And then I would like to go
think it would be
back.
recommended for you to get some sort of an agreement, because if he were to sell and the next guy says no,
Right, and you're saying that at some point it'd go right in, right out, but that would apply to not this project, but the whole development
Correct.
so, yeah. But, and then I would like to go back to your comment about the trees. We actually had trees in it on our first submittal on it, but because we're reusing the parking lot and the islands are not wide enough, you can't put trees in it, so we were told to go ahead and put trees other places, but put all the bushes in those islands that go between there. I just wanted to let you know on that as well.
Thank you. Hector, the only other question I have is, would this fall into the distance from, I guess, this property to the residential, kind of the same scenario that we got into on the 291 corridor, that potentially for the developer, if a brewery or bar, dispensary, something were to go in here, do we understand for the developer here while we're in the public hearing that walking distance, I know walking distance is for the dispensaries, does that fall the same way for a brewery or a bar or a little restaurant bar type situation?
Sort of run through all the different types of uses. Dispensary would be the only one where it would be legal walking paths explicitly. Everything else in our ordinance that I can think of is basically as the crow flies.
Crow flies.
Yes.
So would we make the crow flies distance just for the respect of the tenant if maybe someone came along and said, hey, we want to put in a goat brewing 2 over here at this location, do they meet that distance?
I'd have
I
to.
think is it 300 feet?
I believe it's 200, and when it comes to a bar, for different types of uses, it is a little more explicit as to where do you make those measurements. So, like for a bar, it reads like I believe from the front entrance. So, depending on which tenant space we're looking at, and I'll see if I can pull up.
But we can certainly also work,
yeah.
we can provide the applicant, I think your point is to make sure they're aware, like when they're working
Yes,
with
we're here in
tenants,
public
yeah.
hearing, I want them to
So,
understand
that there are some
the range
tenants
of
that maybe
motion
may
that
not
we're
work.
here of, they might have to go at the one end of the building, not the other end of the building.
And we can certainly, we'll follow up and provide them a list in that code section so that when they are working with their tenants, they'll have that information as well.
They've got the distance for dispensaries. I think we might have the distance back, maybe on what would be the north end of the facility might be too close to the residential, that something would have to go to the south end of the facility, I would think.
For a bar or something like that,
Yeah.
Yes.
I think that covers everything that I have. Did you guys have a neighborhood meeting for this? There was nothing? Perfect. I'm good. Anything else from the commission? Commissioner Trafton, you good? Fell asleep. I will close the public hearing. and
Good, thanks.
Open up for discussions or comments from the commission. Commissioner Rader, any comments?
Yes. I noticed on the staff report, it said it was an unremarkable vacant property. So you're going to take it, unremarkable vacant property, and make it remarkable. Because I think I love the way it looks. And that lot has been ugly and vacant for, I shouldn't say ugly. It's been vacant for a long time, and it isn't pretty when I go over there because all my title companies are over on that other side. So I just think it's going to be a great project, and I thank you guys for coming here with it.
Commissioner Arth. Zinsky.
You know, I like the look of the building. I wish there was a way that we could do a few more trees in the front. I do agree with Pembroke here. So, but overall, I think it's a good amenity. To the city. It's a nice facility, and nice to see some improvement to that lot. So, thank you.
Commissioner Pembroke.
Yes, thank you, Chair. To clarify my comment, the reason why I stated that we're overparked is because we can actually cut out a couple parking spaces to make room for trees, which I think is important. So, yes, correct, the islands are too small now, but they make concrete saws and shovels, and it's real easy to put some curb back in. So it'd be nice to see some trees in front, and I think your clients, when they pulled up to it, would enjoy that as well. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Trafton.
No comments, sir. Thank you.
Yay. Last chance. No, thank you guys very much. This lot is, I'm glad something's happened with it and appreciate it. I remember 4 years ago when you were here and we were going to do something with this, and I told the same story. I'm not going to tell anybody what I dug up out of that ground back when it was Missouri Gas Energy. I remember that. No, great project. I think we have everything on the table and we have it going the right way. So with that, I will look to Mrs. Commissioner Rader for a motion.
Chair, I move to recommend approval of application number PL 2023-111, preliminary development of Douglas Corner Retail Building, 150 Northeast Tudor Road, Capital Builders LLC applicant.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Can I get a vote on the motion, please?
Rader.
Aye.
Aye.
Yes.
Gary Trafton.
Yes.
Krasinski.
Yes.
Benbrook.
Yes.
And the application has been recommended for approval. Thank you guys very much. We are at round table and we have a little bit of other business we need to do. Re-election of officers and liaison positions. David, I'm going off of what Mrs. Nassif told us, and we are going to just make a couple of single motions and perfect. So at this time, I would like to make a motion to reappoint Commissioner Dana Arth to the, Commissioner Dana Arth to the CEDC, Community and Economic Development Committee, and Commissioner Rader to the Cultural Arts Committee. If I could get a second on that.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Could I get a vote, please?
Cinda Rader.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Gary Trafton.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
I would like to make a motion to reappoint our existing officers, Donnie Funk as chair, Dana Arth vice chair, Cinda Rader as secretary, and Terry Trafton as assistant secretary.
Second.
Second.
Could I get a vote, please? No, you're fine.
Cinda Rader.
Aye.
Arth.
Aye.
Donnie.
Yes.
Gary Trafton.
Yes.
Krasinski.
Yes.
Randy.
Yes.
Thank you, and the motion carries. Do we know when the Cultural Arts Commission meets by chance?
I don't have their calendar with me, but I will email it out and let
Do
you
you know when they meet?
No. I mean, I've been waiting and waiting and waiting. Shannon's not here. He usually knows these things. Ah.
Oh, you know?
Ah.
Oh.
Oh,
I'm on the Wellness Commission, and the Cultural Commission and the Wellness Commission are kind of on the same thing. We have not picked days of the week yet. First meeting will probably be September is the last I heard. So they're still working out what days of the week and what times and all that.
perfect, thank you. Any round table from staff? No? Just to clarify, we set a date for October, for the October 6th for the joint meeting, is that correct?
I believe it is October 17th is the joint meeting at 6 p.m.
October 17th. Okay,
At 6 p.m.
Yes.
Perfect. Anything else, commission, staff? David, we missed you while you were gone.
Chair.
Oh, gosh, what, Mr. Trafton?
Hey, I've been quiet this whole meeting. Could we get a notice sent out on a joint council meeting? I don't seem to have that on my calendar.
Well, we just gave it to you, so please place it upon your calendar.
I love it when city staff send me those nice notices so they can go right into my calendar.
Okay. We'll see what we can do.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome, Commissioner Trafton.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I'd like to remove Mr.
He didn't even know he was the vice secretary.
I did too.
Anything else? Everybody good? We are adjourned.